Hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's video. And today I'm going to be introducing you to a little project that we're going to be running on the channel alongside other bits and pieces. So I've still got a few bits and pieces to finish off for clients and things, so I'm recording those as I go, and hopefully we'll have those edited and uploaded for you as and when we can have them available. Hopefully there's going to be a couple of interesting bits and pieces in there for you. In the meantime, like I said, this is something that I've been meaning to get started with since the first lockdown back in 2020. I think I bought this, looking back on things, I believe it was about the August time in 2020. So, but this is something that I've been wanting for a long time. This is something that, as a kid, a teenager really, it was something that was released in Japan only, and it's something that I always really liked. As soon as I saw it, it was like, you will see, for a myriad of reasons, why somebody who is a fan of video gaming would actually quite like one of these. At the time, it looked like something that had jumped out of the Starship Enterprise, and technologically speaking, it sort of did. So we'll take a look and we'll see what it is. But first of all, of course, I'm going to tease you a little bit and see if you can't guess. So, okay, so some information about it then, just to see if you can try and work it out before we get it out of the box to show you. But this is something I'm incredibly passionate about, and like I said, this is something that as a teenager, once I saw it, I thought, oh, I really hope they bring those to the UK. Now in the end, unfortunately, they didn't, and the machine itself stayed a Japan-only console, if you can call it that. That's your first clue. So, yes, so they were quite expensive, which is one of the reasons why they didn't sell too many of these. But technologically speaking, at the time when these were released, these were actually quite far and away of anything that we sort of had at the time. In Japan and various other bits and pieces, parts of the world, these might have been sort of, at the time, perhaps becoming more commonplace. But here in Europe, we didn't really have this sort of thing until a couple of years later. And then once you actually realise the machine, and you realise some of the features that it has, which were sort of like forebears to things we'd see going forwards, that's another clue for you. You might see why I really quite liked it. And as I say, and it's a very futuristic design, you know, back then, and even now, to be fair, it still looks really cool. It's a big old beast and it weighs a ton. So that's another clue for you. So remember, it was Japan only. It is a current console manufacturer who released it. That's another clue for you. You might have already got it by now off the back of that. But just in case you haven't, okay. So to give you an idea, it was released on the 13th of December 2003. It came in 2 flavours, and there were 4 different revisions of this machine in a relatively short space of time. As I say, they sort of tried to chop and change the specs about a little bit, added a few new features here and there just to see if they could get something to stick and try and bring that price point down, but it never really caught on, and it never really worked. These things remained fairly expensive all the way throughout their lives. So to give you an idea, the introductory price for the lesser of the 2 flavours when these were first released was 79,800 yen, and the larger version was 88,800 yen, and it was discontinued in February of 2005. So a very short run, I think you'll agree there. So from December 2013 to February 2005, so just over 12 months there, isn't it? So yeah, what, 14 months on sale? Wow. So that is an incredibly short period of time. Initially, when these things were shown off at CTEC in 2003, they showed different colours. There was a white one, a silver one, a yellow one, a red one, and a blue one. We saw the white one, and we saw a limited run of the silver, but the other colours weren't ever available. And to be fair, I think it's all the better for it myself. But, you know, The other ones did look pretty cool, but I think the white and the silver did suit it down to the ground. So I tell you what then, let's get to the bottom of this. If you haven't already worked it out, then we are indeed talking about the Sony Psx. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Andrew, have you lost your tiny mind, mate? The Psx was released everywhere. I've got one upstairs in the attic with about 400 games with it. What are you talking about, mate? No, I'm not talking about... You see, now this is another one, isn't it? Alright, so the Sony Psx. Now, I know we all refer to the PlayStation 1 as the Sony Psx, and we do. But the Sony Psx was a machine in its own right. And the Sony Psx actually wasn't produced at all by Sony Computer Entertainment. It was actually by Sony Corporation themselves. It was seen primarily as a piece of home entertainment hardware. A piece of consumer electronics, really. It was seen as a hard disk recorder and a DVD disc recorder and a home media centre before it was seen as a PlayStation, which is kind of cool because it was both combined. But it was an unhappy marriage between the piece of consumer electronics that it was sort of primarily and the PlayStation bit, which was sort of tacked on secondary. But whilst it was an unhappy marriage, and you'll see why, because it led to some really quite bizarre hardware choices and some problems, which we'll get onto later on. But you'll see, that actually it's kind of a cool mashup. Now, this thing, as I say, primarily speaking, was supposed to be a home media centre. So it was a bit like the granddaddy to the Xbox One. In a way, when Microsoft released that, the idea was that you would plug your satellite receiver into the back of it, and you'd be able to play your DVDs, you'd be able to play your CDs, you'd be able to play your home videos, your photographs, you'd be able to take your memory stick straight out of your digital camera, put it into this thing. You'd be able to, as I say, play your DVDs, your VC, the lot really. Of course, you had that built-in hard disk drive recorder. It could record to DVD. It actually has a DVD burner built directly into the system, so you can transfer recordings from hard drive to DVD to back it up to keep it. And things like that, you'll be able to take your photos from storage and burn it to a DVD for safekeeping and everything else. But all the time that was the case, it has full PlayStation 2 hardware incorporated into the machine. So this isn't actually software emulation. This is the full baked hardware inside this machine. But as I say, it was sort of like two completely separate devices in one case, which led to some really quite bizarre and these days quite troublesome issues, which we're going to aim to resolve, which is not going to be easy, but there you go. So I bought this from eBay. Hopefully you'll be able to see on the screen right now. This is the listing that I bought. But as you can see there, US dollars, $199.98 free postage from Japan. So this was an eBay listing. I did buy it from eBay UK. Now, the thing with Japanese auctions sometimes is that the guys and girls over in Japan, the auctions sometimes, if you want them shipping abroad internationally, it's always best to check with the seller that they're happy to do so, because from what I can gather, the shipping costs in Japan are actually quite expensive. So, like for example, this guy here was offering free postage. It was like, do I really expect him to ship it for free to the UK? Anyway, it turned out he was completely happy to do so. So I plumped on it and fell lucky, and it turned up and it arrived. Now, what you'll notice here is it was advertised as a Sony Psx DESR 7000, which was the 250 gig version of the system, which was the larger, the sort of premium spec, if you like. There was a 160 gig version, which was the smaller variant, which was like the introductory level item. Over the years, there were 4 different iterations. Over the 14 months, there were 4 different iterations. So it started out with the 5000 and 7000s. It then went to the 51 and 7100 respectively. So those two units were relatively similar, from what I could gather. There's not really much of a difference there. I'm assuming the the differences there are probably something like really tiny internal tweaks, maybe. Again, probably to try and help costing. The DESR 5500 and 7500 were actually quite a bit different, so that's where we started to see things like a front hard disk drive access light, iLink ports, so basically, you know, little Firewire port you'll see at the front of the PS2. Yeah, that one. It obviously kept the VHF and UHF inputs for the TV, because that's, again, what it was always intended to be. You also then had a VHF UHF out, a BS input and a BS output. And then the 57 and 7700 were the final two models, which again were quite similar, but they actually had an export to PSP, an export video function to PSP, because of course by that time the PSP had just about been introduced, and that feature was rolled out on those later machines to try and sort of get a bit of a family going and incorporate it more, you know, with the gaming aspect. But unfortunately, none of it ever quite worked, and in February 2005 the machines were discontinued. So that is a bit of a shame. If you search up Sony Psx on eBay, then you'll see plenty of these things. You know, they are on there. The only trouble with them is, unfortunately, the Achilles heel of this machine. And again, another reason why maybe they didn't do quite so well. They were fairly fragile things, unfortunately. They didn't have a great deal of longevity to them at all. The hard disk drives were rather weak and died, and unfortunately, when the hard disk drive dies, it's a bit like early serialization of components. So while the hard disk drive itself isn't tied to the machine, and that can be swapped, the issue you've got is that the data itself on the disk is tied to that particular hard disk. So you could buy a 160 gig hard drive or a 250 gig hard drive, copy the data across, put it in your machine, and it would just sit there as a black screen, dead as a doornail. It's on the fly encryption between the hardware and the data. So if that disk dies, as they often did, then unfortunately you ended up with, well, it wasn't a paperweight. There were ways around it if you buy one with a defunct hard disk. But you do kind of lose out on some of the things which make it really quite special. And at some point I'm probably going to try and have a drive on this, because I think these machines are worth saving. These are really, really cool. They're a part of the PlayStation history. They're a great piece of hardware. They look fantastic, and they're like the grandfather to the modern things we have today. You know, the modern Xbox One, you know, that's what consoles have now become. They've become this convergent device. We saw things in this machine like the XMB for the first time. You know, you probably remember the XMB for the first time from the PSP, from the PS3. No, it was from this machine, and you'll see a very early version of it here. This is the first time. This is the first place we saw it. So, you know, there's so many cool things. It's such a shame that so many of these machines get killed off because of that daft data encryption. I don't know, unfortunately there's a few people who looked at it, but because it was a Japan only issue and it wasn't really anything that was widespread, and there ain't that many of them about, the time hasn't really been invested to work out how to defeat that encryption or turn it off. Whether it can be turned, I don't know. You know, if you're if you're from Sony and you're watching it, I'm probably in trouble if you're from Sony and you're watching this. But no, to be fair, you know, if you are, and this twigs a bell and you think, yeah, you're right, you know, if there's something, I don't know if you've got some sort of service tools, or, you know, there's some sort of secret backdoor to turning this off, or so we could maybe put some, you know, an SSD in there, back the data up and have it in there, you know, so it's preserved forever, or at least just and so we can put a different hard drive in there. That'd be so cool. I doubt anybody's watching, and it's probably falling on deaf ears, but that would be so cool. So if you are, or you know anybody, or you know somebody who might know somebody, then please get them to hit me up. Contact details are in the description of this video, on the very slim chance, you know, maybe there's something we can do with this. It would be fantastic to be able to preserve more of these systems. All the ones on eBay are all listed as junk. Now that's a common thing from Japanese consumer electronics items. It's basically like a a solder scene tag, so don't worry about it. But you know, in this instance, there are faults with this machine that I've bought. These machines ran very hot. You know, it's got a fairly bulky power supply in there. We're talking about 2003. You know, technology has moved on a lot. The efficiency of you know, things like power supplies and that have moved on massively over the last sort of few years, as has, you know, the shrinking of them. But in this case, you know, unfortunately, it is still a fairly big old beast with a big capacitor on it. They do run hot, and a big old transformer on it. They do run hot, they do generate a lot of heat in there. You've got that old hard disk drive flying around. Again, not the most efficient thing, generates quite a lot of heat. You've only got a little fan. It's not great for heat dissipation. The heat did kill a lot of these machines. And then you also got to the other one, which is ultimately the problem we have with this machine. Its laser is defunct. Now, you're thinking, right, so what, just put another laser in it, right? It's a PlayStation. No, it's not, right? So this is what I'm saying, where it's got an amalgamation of two different pieces of hardware in the same box. Okay, and there were some really crazy but cool things going on. So, what happens is, the disk drive inside this machine has not one, but two optical pickups. Yeah, that's right, it has two lasers in there. One on each side of the... So if you think the spindle motor's in the middle, which spins the disc, it's got one laser on one side, and one laser on the other. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's really cool, but it's crazy, okay? So, how does it work? Okay, so what happens is, you put a disc in, right? Now, obviously, these machines are Japan only. They are region locked. So they are Japanese NTSC, so NTSCJ. We here in Europe are PAL, so we are completely out of region. So none of my games, discs, DVDs, anything is going to work in this machine as it stands. It spins it up, it checks the region, it checks the disc type. Okay, now this is where I'm going to cover cropper, because obviously none of my discs are the right region. But what happens is effectively it spins up, and what it does is, first it fires up. It takes out, the first thing it does is the consumer electronics side of it. The hard disk recorder, the DVD recorder side, fires up first to detect that information. So it's looking for primarily a blank DVD or a DVD video. So it spins up that DVD burner laser first of all to identify the disk type and the region. Okay, what happens then is, if it identifies that disc as a PlayStation 2 game, it then passes the control over to the second optical pickup, which in this case I think is a KHS 400C, so you know, a standard PS2 FAT optical pickup, which is still readily available. And then that laser will take over the reading of the PlayStation 2 game. The machine will change mode into PS2, and then the thing will effectively boot into PS2 mode, and up it'll come. Now, the problem with that is, if your DVD burner laser is knackered, as is often the case with these things, there are so many out there, and not one of them has a working DVD burner laser, that unfortunately, the thing won't read any discs at all. You put a PS2 game in there, even if your KHS 400C laser is perfectly fine and functional, unfortunately it won't play because it can't identify the disk type to hand it over to the PS2 side of the system. So unfortunately you do need a working DVD burner laser inside this machine, and I'll put some details down below for you, but effectively if you try to look up those optical pickups, you'll find a couple of really old listings from places like perhaps eBay, but more often than not AliExpress, Alibaba, places like that, sort of Chinese wholesale reseller platforms. But unfortunately they're long gone out of stock. They're not available anymore from anywhere. As I say, it's not even an option to sort of get another machine and take it, because so many of these are faulty because that laser is done for, it's gone, it's knackered. And here's the other thing, because I don't know if you can store games on the internal hard disk. I'm not sure if you can, but if you can, then you probably wouldn't want to, because as I say, it's quite delicate. So that's not even an option to back things up to there, I don't think. It could be, but you know, I'm not aware that it is. We'll try it, we'll experiment with it if we can get this thing working. But you know, we'll we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It does have a USB input on the front, but unfortunately that USB input is USB 1.1, so the data transfer rate through there isn't brilliant, so you can have issues with things like FMV and things like that. You know, the bitrate can get a bit choppy and a bit laggy and a bit stuttery, unfortunately. So even if you plug a hard disk, you know, with your games backed up to there to play on this system, unfortunately even that doesn't work particularly well. Now then, I do have potentially a way of fixing this. When I bought the machine back in August 2020, I did have a really quick look. I'm not going to lie, this has been out of the box. I have had it apart just to sort of get an idea how it comes apart. Just have a really quick look at the hardware just to make sure it was complete and wasn't missing anything internally. And indeed it all seems to be there and it's all okay. Now what happened was I did that, essentially it got left in a pile of bits, which was a bit silly of me, but there you go. And it was left there for quite a while. Now what happened was it was left there then until I actually moved house, so it was probably in a pile there for a good 3 or 4 months. I essentially got to the point where the day I was moving out, I had to move my stuff out of my spare room. This thing was in pieces on the floor. Now what I didn't want to do was just throw it back in the box, so what I did was I very, very hastily reassembled it. Now when I got it, this particular machine did work. It powered on, it started up to the Psx screen, it started up to the XMB. For all intents and purposes it works as much as the seller said it did. And essentially what the seller said was that the thing starts up, it starts up to the XMB, the hard disk therefore does appear to be working, but it doesn't seem to read any discs, it doesn't play any games. So, you know, so I knew that this was an optical pickup issue. But to be honest, I just wanted to find one with a working hard disk. I thought I'd worry about the rest of it later on. Now, there isn't anything really about fixing these things online. I've had a really quick look around YouTube and things. There's the odd video, but not very much. Certainly nothing in any real great detail. There's plenty of videos out there going, well, this is a Psx, look at it, isn't it really cool? And I think one channel does actually have a fully working one. But they are unicorns in as much as there really isn't very many of them like that. So let's take a look then and see. So this is the seller here, Disney-Dream-Store. So yeah, I bought it on the 26th of August 2020 and yeah, it was $189 US. I don't know if the seller still operates on eBay or not. Oh, they do. Yeah, so they've got a few. They do carry like the PS2 limited edition version or something there, but it's a very expensive one. Xbox 360 limited edition. They do have some really cool stuff, so go check them out. And as I say, well, at the time anyway, they seemed quite happy to ship this for me, and it arrived very well packaged. It arrived in very good condition. I was actually really pleased, and obviously it was exactly as described, so I can't thank the seller enough. So if he is watching this, and I doubt it, but if he is, and he remembers, thank you very much. So what we'll do is, we'll get this out of the box now so you can take a look at it, and then we'll go over what the plan of attack is for this particular console. So I've just had to remove the shipping information, so my apologies for the jump cut there. I had kept all the invoices and documentation in one place, which, you know. Right, so let's take a look. So it came with some cool additional bits and pieces. So the first thing it came with was this little 8 meg white PlayStation 2 Fujiwork Magic Gate memory card. 8 meg, a little protective case, which is really quite nice. In really good condition, as is the rest of it really. It came with a Japanese spec power cable. The composite video, red, white, yellow cable. Nothing particularly special about any of that. This was the media remote, which a lot of them ship with, however most of them go missing. So it's quite nice actually to find one with it, and it does work. It's slightly yellowed, so it'd be nice to perhaps get some... what's that stuff they use to clean this stuff? It's quite popular with things like SNESes and Dreamcasts and things. It's like some OxyClean, you put it in and Retro Bright, is it, or something? We'll see if we can get some of that and work some magic on that, because everything else weirdly. So the reason they go a bit orangey, a bit beigey, is because of the fire retardant plastic. So they used to put bromine in it to give it some fire retardant properties. And unfortunately, over time, it leaches out the plastic and stains the colouring. So it'd be nice to see if we can maybe restore that back to white. But that's the only thing, really, that's happened to. The rest of it is really quite nice. And the other good thing about what really attracted me to this machine, apart from the fact its price was good, it had some extra little accessories with it. It was the version I wanted, it was the 7000 series, and to be honest, being a bit of a collector, I wanted the very, very first earliest one, rather than the latest one. Even though there may have been a couple of benefits to it, but, that's just my personal preference. I'm going to put that down there because it's doing my head in. These things had a special DualShock 2 controller, which came with them, for reasons you'll see shortly. So, it's white. It's in beautiful condition. It's absolutely perfect. Look at it. I don't think it's even really been used. In fact, I'd be very surprised if this thing had actually ever been used at all. It doesn't look like it has. So, it literally looks new. Like, if you look at the conditions of the thumbsticks and things, and it does work. It does work, because I've been using it on some other PlayStation 2 bits and pieces that I've been looking at recently. Because my other DualShock 2 has carked it, but we'll look at that at some point as well. But as you can see there, it's in beautiful condition. Absolutely gorgeous. Like, literally, even the palm grips aren't shiny. The texture is still on the thumbsticks. They're in perfect condition. It is brand new. I don't think anybody ever used it. I think somebody was using this as a TV and hard disk recorder, and they weren't really using it for the PSX function. And then in there is the actual machine itself. So as I say, I have had this out before now. I have had it plugged in and used it. I may have to jump cut this. It's a bit awkward to get out of the box. And there she is, ladies and gentlemen, the PSX. So, generally speaking, it's actually in really nice condition, apart from one or two tiny, tiny little bits. So, let's have a look. So, things to look out for if you are looking to maybe buy one of these off the back of this video, or this series of videos when we've finished. These, what was it, the 7000 series ones? Or was it the early? I can't remember now. Some of them have a matte finish on them. I think the later ones have a matte finish. Or is it the 5000 ones that have a matte finish? Can't remember. If I can look it up, I'll make sure to either note it up or, we'll cover it in a future video. But you can see this one's got a really nice glossy top, and it's not really coming through on video, I don't think. But there's one or two tiny marks in it. Oh yeah, I think you can just about see there. There's one or two scratches in it. Nothing major, but they are there. But I think, to be honest, I do have a rotary polisher for my car, so I'm fairly sure we should be able to get those looking a little bit better. But they're certainly not bad, and they're not gouged into the actual surface. You can't even really feel them. They're just there. So they should actually just polish out, which is quite cool. It's a lovely looking bit of kit. So obviously the condition of the actual case itself is something to note. The other thing which these things seem to tend to suffer with, if I can just get you down here, as I say, they're a really, really cool, smart-looking piece of kit. I absolutely loved them. There you go. I'll just boost the brightness there for you a little bit. Hopefully you can see a little bit better there. Is this front flap? So there's a little open tab there. There you go. And as you can see underneath, that's where your memory cards plug in. You've got a home, up, down, left, right, enter there for navigating the XMB. There's a USB frontal input and a Memory Stick Pro slot there. Now what happens is that quite often these doors get caught and banged about, and they're only on these little tiny plastic sprues. They are really easily broken, so a lot of them you'll find on eBay for sale will either sort of like be hanging off on one side slightly, or it might even be missing altogether. So that's something which is a little bit of an Achilles heel with them, so I try to be really careful and just push them either way. You can see they sort of snap in and out. You can see why they break. You can certainly see why they break, but doesn't it look an awesome bit of kit? When you look at it like that, it looks fantastic. I absolutely love it. It looks better in the flesh than it did in the pictures. And the pictures back when I was, I think I'd have been 16. There's a reason I fell in love with it. You know, they're so cool. I mean, so you've got the power button over here, eject, slot loading DVD, CD, quick game. So a shortcut there to take you straight back to the XMB. You've got hard disk recorder activity light and a disk recording activity light, infrared sensor, and then, as I say, underneath that little door there, you have. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little chamfer in the plastic up here, so it comes underneath the buttons around the bottom there. So it kind of refracts the light. So I think you can probably just about see it on the video, but there's like these lines here. So it looks like it's scratched, it's broken, but it's actually not. It's actually in the plastic. I've just noticed this bit here myself. Oh no, please tell me that's not cracked, but it's not. No, it's just the way the light in here is refracting off the various bits and pieces. Now, generally speaking, like I say, as far as that's concerned, it's actually in really nice condition. The one thing that isn't so good on this particular machine is the side panels. So these silver plastic bits here. So I do sometimes go on the lookout for them to see if I can find some that are in better condition than these, but I'm going to admit I do struggle. There's not really very much there. I have considered buying like another unit, but whether they'd be any better, I don't know. And to be honest, it sort of seems a bit of a waste to buy another unit just to nick its side panels. Not so much because, you know, it's the cost of it. The cost of it's irrelevant to me. You know, I intend to keep and essentially museum piece this bit really in my collection. But the side pieces on this one aren't great, and I'll show you exactly why. So if we turn it round here to the right, you'll see on this side. Hanging myself up. You'll see on this side here we've got a little hole in the side panel there, which is around the central catch. So essentially there's a locking tab, and they can be quite awkward to get off. They're actually really easy to get off, but if you don't know what you're doing and you just try and pull them, then I imagine that'll be the damage. So basically, when I bought this, somebody had. I mean, you know, you're always going to expect it, really. Somebody's been in here before and had a look and a prod and a play around before I did. So, you know, it's hardly surprising. But yeah, I'm assuming, because essentially it pushes into a tab here and it locks around here, so I'm assuming if you just try and pull it, that's going to be the damage. So I don't know if, I mean, it just looks like it's sort of pushed in. I don't know whether I'll be able to sort of push that back out, maybe fill behind it. I don't know, something I can try. The other thing, which is a bit of a problem on these particular machines, again, I don't know if I might have to lift you up for you to see this bit, but if you take a look down here, there, yeah, you can see it's split. So I don't know if this was done in shipping. It could have been, maybe. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to remember this thing's come, you know, express from Japan. It took only a couple of days to get here. I don't know if it was. It may not have been. But I tell you what, if that's the only bit of damage it sustained, then it did very well. But you can kind of see here, look, the corner's just ever so slightly kinked over. Yeah, I don't know. I might be able to do something with them, perhaps. I might be able to fill these in, maybe sand that back slightly, repair the side, and then maybe try and match the paint and repaint it. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know if that's worth doing. Same on the other side, you see. So maybe this is just a weakness of these particular machines. I'm not entirely sure. But but there you go. And as you can see there, Sony DVD recorder with hard disk. Makes no mention of PlayStation, because essentially it was an afterthought, as I say. So you can see DSR 7000 and we're region locked here. Region 2. NTSCJ. So there you are. The 03 I'm not sure, it's got some Japanese writing underneath. I don't know if you can see that. Not really. I was just wondering if you could see it enough to read it, but maybe not, because the lighting in here is not brilliant. And then of course you've got your various serial numbers and everything else on the side. Now these 7000 units, another reason why I quite wanted one of these was the top parts. So they actually have a rear light bar. So the idea is that you can actually stand them up or lay them flat. If I can get you in focus there. So they have these lower light strips. So you'll see this when we get it powered back up, but there's like a blue glow around the front when it's on and there's a disc in. So this little strip you can see here is the blue disc in, and then you've got another replication of the hard disk access, hard disk record and disk record, and another infrared sensor here for the front. The later models I think dropped this additional light bar. Oh, and another quick tip for you as well, if you do buy these, and it does have that light bar on the back, if you buy one without power, then essentially check that light bar is plugged in, because if that light bar isn't plugged in or the cable is damaged, the machine doesn't actually power on. It's completely dead. so that's one for you. Yeah, so as I say, so it turned up and it was really nice condition. It did work perfectly fine from what I could gather. Aside from that little crack there on that back corner, the other side is actually really quite nice. As you can see there, that's in perfect nick really. So this side panel is probably salvageable. The one on the other side I don't know. I'll see. I can try and repair it, can't I suppose. And if push comes to shove, I mean, obviously, if you've got one of these things, and you know you're using it for spares and repairs, and you've got some decent side panels, then by all means, please let me know, because I'd probably be interested in buying them up from you if you have them. So there you go. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. So this particular machine came from. I won't read his name and his address because obviously that's not particularly fair on the guy. But it came from. It does say on here somewhere. Let's have a look. Shinjuku. So is that Tokyo? Yeah, Tokyo Shinjuku. So in Japan. So that's where it started from. And obviously it took only a couple of days to get to me here in the UK. So unit value was listed as $189, which of course it was. Commercially used video games console. 6 kilos was the official packaging weight. So I've kept all the commercial invoices and things because I think it's really quite cool. It's nice to keep with the machine. It's part of its history now, I suppose. So they'll be staying with it. So that's that. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, so what's the plan of action with this then? What are we going to do? What are we going to do to get this thing working to a degree? Because it's my thorough intention to get this thing working perfectly, fully working, 100%. Okay, so that includes reading games, discs, DVDs, and actually, you know, just going through it and making sure everything else is tickety-boo. So, as I say, I've opened it up before now just to make sure everything's there, just to make sure I didn't need to order any other parts or identify anything that might be difficult to get a hold of. As I say, it was in a pile of parts in my spare room. It was very hastily thrown back together by me when I moved house, and unfortunately since then it hasn't powered back up. So I'm hoping that it's just something stupid that I've not plugged back in. Or, you know, because I literally did just sort of like clip it back together and threw the screws back in it just so I didn't lose anything. I did end up losing 2 screws, which I think are possibly upstairs. But we'll see. If not, I'm going to have to try and get hold of some. I am missing a rubber foot from this as well. So again, if you have one of these machines and you're parting it out, or you've used it for part and you've got some rubber feet, again, I would be forever indebted to you if you'd sell them to me. So, again, you know, it's just daft stuff. But again, it was complete. These are things that I've lost, you know, that really bloody annoys me, because it was, when I say it was in a pile, it wasn't a pile, but it was kept neat, you know, it was kept in the bloody box, and somehow the bits and pieces have gone walkies. I don't know if you noticed, but one side of it's split, so I presume that's where they've gone, and unfortunately never to be seen again, some of these parts. As I say, I think I've got the screws, but the foot, I can't find it anywhere. Hopefully it's in there somewhere. I don't know, maybe it's floating around on the back or something. But it was all kept together, so it's weird how a couple of bits have gone missing. But anyway, so as I say, it's thoroughly my intention to fully restore this machine. It's my intention to get everything working perfectly, including that DVD laser. Now, as I say, I've opened it up. I did try, just on the off chance, you know, a cotton bud with some alcohol, just to see if it would clean up, to see if it would do anything, but it didn't. So the laser itself does appear completely defective. You can tweak them up, you can calibrate them to try, you know, you can lower the resistance of the diode to try and let some more power through, you know, when they start to fail. But this machine has been fiddled with before now, and that pot setting seems quite low, so it may be that somebody's already done that and blown it. But what I will do is, I've had to think outside the box to try and think of ways I can repair this machine, as I say, because some of these bits like that DVD burn laser just aren't available anywhere. So I think I have a solution. I think I've actually identified something I can do. So I think I've got an answer, but that's obviously not something I'm going to know till I try to actually repair it. But obviously, everything that I do, I will thoroughly document. I'm going to show you how to repair. I'm going to go I'm going to go through it step by step to show you exactly what I do. We're going to film the lot, so ultimately, in future generations, anybody coming across this, one of these machines wants to get them working again, I'm going to give you all the information I had, all the information I found, the bits and pieces that I tried that maybe worked, that failed, where to maybe get some of this stuff if it's really tricky to get hold of, if I can find places, and we'll show you the thorough full process to get this thing from being a piece of so-called junk to being what it was supposed to be. And as I say, it would be lovely to be able to find someone somewhere who can maybe get us a way to safeguard these machines for future generations, because they're so cool, you know. The XMB, you know, the amalgamation of the technology inside this, you know, really cool looking case, you know, it is essentially, if you think back 2003, I think in this country we just about got DVD recorders over here by 2003. I don't think hard disk recorders were a thing for another couple of years, you know, never mind throwing a PS2 in there as well. You know, all those things were individual bits of kit in their own right, and they were bloody expensive. Well, they certainly were here in the UK. So, you know, the fact that this thing was doing that in a convergent sort of setting a couple of years beforehand was incredibly impressive. But, yeah, so there you go. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So there we are. That's the project. That's the aim. So... so what we're going to do, first things first, I think, we're going to have to approach this logically, as logically as you can. So of course, as I say, it's NTSC-J. I haven't got any Japanese games, discs or anything else. They're not really something that appeals to me. I know there are some Japanese only releases and some of the games are great. I know you can translate them, but they're really just not my sort of genre. So I'm not going to go and buy some Japanese games to test it with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at ways I can perhaps get this thing to boot some UK spec games. So maybe taking the region lock off there. So that would be cool. So if I could get it to play my UK copies of, you know, my PS2 games and DVDs and things, then that would be really sweet. So potentially going to have to look at some sort of mod. Secondly, we're going to have to... I mean, I know there's nothing I can do with the hard drive. If it dies, it dies at this point in time. But what I do want to do is I do want to back up completely the full hard drive. So all the data, partitions and everything, just do a full 100% true dump of what's on that drive. At least then if it dies, I've got the data. I know the data's tied to the disk and then I'll be screwed anyway. But in future, you know, if somebody does defeat it, or somebody can work out a way of getting this thing to use another drive, then hopefully, you know, having a backup of the data is something. I think there are ways actually you can get the XMB back, but it's not fully functional. You can use like the Final Fantasy 40 gig Sony official hard disks, and there are ways of cloning the partitions across onto that smaller drive to get the XMB back and functional, but it's not perfect, obviously, but it's something. So, but I need the data. You know, whatever happens, if that ever happens, I need the data. So that's something. So obviously that's something we need to do. As I say, we need to work out some sort of mod to unlock the region so I can play some PAL stuff on here, so I can get it to work for things in this country. What else do we need to do with it? Oh yes, of course, and then we need to get it to read some discs. So at the moment, I'm not sure if it's not reading discs because it can't read them, or if it's reading discs, or if it's not reading discs because it's basically the wrong region. So I think we're going to have to do the region stuff first, and then try and work out, you know. So there's different ways of doing it. We could either look at putting a chip in there, or we could try and use something like FreeMcBoot. There is a PSX version of FreeMcBoot. You do need another PlayStation capable of that is modded in some way to actually make the memory card, but I've got another PS2, but it's not modded. You can use swap tricks and things on it, but you know, anyway, if this is all going over your head and you're not sure what any of this is, don't worry, we'll cover it. We'll just go over it. It's going to be a really fun project. I'm really quite looking forward to getting it started and getting rolling on it and getting this thing out of the box where it's lived for the last 2 years and getting it actually, you know, underneath my TV where it can look really cool. So that's one thing there we need to do. Yeah. And then the stuff like the XMB. So obviously with it being a Japanese spec only machine, it's in Japanese. I can't read Japanese. I'm not smart enough. So there are English translations you can actually apply to the data on the disk to patch it into English, which I think would be really quite cool to do. Apparently there are a couple of risks to that procedure, but you know, I'm willing to take that risk. So we'll take a look and see what we have to do to get that done. And and we'll take it from there. And obviously anything else we find as we go, we'll identify the faults as we find them. The first thing we've got to do obviously is get power back to the bloody thing, because it did work. I moved house, threw it back together, and it doesn't power on anymore. So I'm hoping it's something stupid. I'm hoping it's something that, you know, I'm hoping it's something I've not plugged in, and it's not something that's got damaged on the motherboard, because again, that's a whole different kettle of fish as well. You know, if we're missing, if we've damaged something specific to this machine, it could be tricky to to get that right. So we'll have to take a look at that and cross our fingers and toes that we can do that. So first of all, let's get power back to it. Then we're going to have to defeat the region protection somehow, some way, so I can actually get my PAL stuff to play. It's Region 2 DVD. Region 2, Europe is Region 2 as well, I think, isn't it? If I remember rightly. Region 1 is USA. I'm sure our discs are Region 2. But obviously we're PAL, not NTSC. So maybe that makes a difference or not. Don't know. Yeah. So we'll do that. As I say, we'll take a dump of all the data from the hard drive. We'll show you what we do with that. We need to obviously sort that laser issue out. How we do that, I've got an idea. We'll see if it works. yeah, and like I said, we'll patch the data for the XMB, and we'll see if we can't get that to rock and roll, so we can understand it. And you know, then we'll take a look around the menus and stuff, and we'll show you the XMB in all its glory, and we'll see if we can't have some fun with it. So thank you very much for watching then, ladies and gentlemen. You've been fantastic as always. Thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully you're as enthusiastic about this thing as I am. Yeah, I will see you. As I say, this is a project that'll be running alongside other bits and pieces. So you know, it's not all gonna be just this. You know, there'll be other bits and pieces thrown in there as well. So thank you very much for watching. For those of you who saw my last video, we're a few weeks down the line from there, so I've got another hospital appointment this month for some more tests and diagnostics and stuff, so hopefully that'll go well. I am generally feeling a little bit better in myself at the moment these days, so that's cool. I think that the medication and things is starting to kick in. I think the levels are getting, you know, are getting there for me. So I'm certainly a lot better than I was a few weeks ago. So yeah, that's looking positive. As I said before, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for sticking by me. Those subscriber numbers and viewing figures and things are holding up very nicely, even though I'm not really upholding my end of the bargain very much at the moment. So as I say, I do thank you for the support. It doesn't go unnoticed and unappreciated, so thank you. And I will see you in the not too distant future, hopefully, for the next video, and maybe, just maybe, in the next instalment of this one. And as I say, once we've got it working and working perfectly, let's see if we can't do something to prolong the life of this thing. So, as I say, they are a tiny box. They do get hot. Let's see if we can find some way of keeping it cool. I do have some ideas, one of which is a bit wacky, but we'll see. But I think it could work, and it could be a good idea to try and preserve the life of this thing as long as we can. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you on the next video. So for me, for now, ladies and gentlemen, it's bye bye. Stay safe, because there are still things in the world, COVID, and obviously those terrible events in Ukraine at the moment. My heart goes out to all of you, for anybody who's affected in that, obviously, and I wish you well. So Godspeed. I'll see you on the next video. For me, for now, it's bye bye. See you soon. Many thanks for watching then, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then why not check out these recommendations below. Also, please remember to comment, rate, and of course subscribe to the channel if you found this useful. We've plenty more content on there, and there's lots more to come.